Hello my friends and welcome to this new episode of self-development. The topic of today's video is going to be I achieved my dreams, now what? Hopefully you're a high achieving person and one day your goals are going to be achieved. Your dreams will become a reality. And believe it or not, when that happens, it can be extremely challenging because you have no goal to pursue. You have no emotionally compelling reason to go forward. And this transition can be extremely difficult, and we're going to talk about the example of Buzz Aldrin. Buzz Aldrin was an astronaut. He was one of the astronauts of the first mission that landed on the moon, Apollo 11, and he was the second man to walk on the moon. And after doing all this, he faced tremendous adversity that he talks about in his book, Magnificent Desolation. And that's what we are going to talk about. Let's dive in. Buzz Aldrin had basically known non-stop success up until the Apollo 11 mission that allowed him to walk on the moon at just 39 years old. Before that, he had become a successful fighter pilot. Then he fought in the Korean War and shut down several enemy airplanes. Then he completed a PhD at the MIT, became an astronaut, and finally walked on the moon. After doing all these amazing things, you would think that he would be the happiest man on planet Earth. But that's not what happened. Right after his mission ended, his life started going completely sideways. Let me read a couple of sentences of the book that really struck me and shows how he was feeling right after the mission ended. How could I have gone almost overnight from being on top of the world to feeling useless, worthless, and washed up? I wanted to resume my duties, but there were no duties to resume. There was no goal, no sense of calling, no project worth pouring myself into. So you can see how somebody who apparently made his dreams a reality can feel so terrible because he has nothing else to do. And that is basically what he calls his last decade. All throughout the 70s, his life went sideways and he hit rock bottom. His problems really started when he started using alcohol more and more to feel better about himself, until he became a full-blown alcoholic. And then he resigned from NASA because he wasn't happy at all about what was going on at NASA. They didn't want him to send it back to the moon or whatsoever, so he resigned. He went back to the US Air Force, but he was snubbed there by the generals. They didn't want to upgrade his grade to general because they knew about his alcoholism and they knew that he was consulting a psychiatrist. So he was very dissatisfied, and he also resigned from the Air Force and took on an early retirement. And then his marriage also went down the shitter and he ended up divorcing his first wife. And to make matters even worse, he was completely broke. So he had to take a job as a car salesman for a couple of years. Imagine that, going from being an astronaut who walks on the moon, a national hero, and then being a terrible car salesman. That's just brutal. And finally, he got involved into a second marriage that was also a disaster and ended up in divorce. Hopefully for Buzz Aldrin, things started to get better in the 80s. He had a happy, this time, third marriage, and he found a lot of new activities that were very compelling to him, and he quit completely alcohol, he wasn't depressed anymore, and so on. And he led a happy life from there on. Now the question is, how can you do to manage those transitions in your life correctly and not have all this turmoil that Buzz Aldrin went through? Because the reality is that all of us, we are going to get through periods of transition in our lives. Whether it is we achieved our dreams and we have nothing else to do, or maybe you just finished college and you don't know what to do, maybe a career that you started is not very satisfactory to you anymore and you have to find something else. A meaningful relationship maybe went to an end. No matter what it is, we will always go through transitions, and we will see how Buzz Aldrin did to effectively go correctly through this transition. Number one, take responsibility. Buzz Aldrin really adopted a victim mentality when he was facing all of these problems. And he was asking himself a lot of disempowering questions, such as, how could it be that NASA just tossed me away like this? How could it be that the US Air Force just snubbed me like this? How is it possible that my wife wants to divorce? What did I do to deserve all this? And you see, all these kind of disempowering questions that put him in a victim mentality. And unfortunately, most people, when they're in dire straits, they take the victim role, and that does not help you. Instead, when you're in a situation like this, you have to take responsibility. You have to understand that you are there because of your decisions and your actions only, not because of external circumstances or somebody else. And that is actually a very good news. The idea is not to beat yourself up, but to understand that if you got yourself into trouble, that means you are also able to get yourself out of trouble without the help of anybody. And that is a very powerful statement and a very empowering belief. Buzz Aldrin says quite literally in his book, getting well is a choice. And you can do the same thing when you're in the same situation. And that's what he did. Once he recognized and took responsibility of his situation, he recognized he had an alcoholism and a depression problem, and he started seeking help for his depression, and he joined the Alcoholics Anonymous to treat his problems. And that was the first step to improve his life, and from there on, things started working much better for him. Number 2, be grateful. Very often, people forget about all the good things and only focus on the bad things going on. And that's what exactly Buzz Aldrin was doing. As I said earlier, he was only focusing on what actually sucked in his life, what was not working out. And he was forgetting all the awesome things he had gone through, how incredibly lucky he was to have lived all these experiences. And in the later part of the book, when he was much wiser, he says that he made sure to be grateful every single day of his life. And he says to himself very often, I could never be so lucky again. And I do not know you, I don't know when you're watching this video or where you are right now, but there is one thing I can know for sure, is that there are hundreds and hundreds of things you could be grateful for. And that reminds me of a personal story. One day I was walking late at night in the street and it was raining, and I was really feeling down about all sort of things, like in the movies, you know, just really walking like this under the rain. And I was wallowing about all sort of things that were not working out, and you know, basically having pity for myself, saying, oh, poor me, and so on. And I walked next to a beggar who was in a wheelchair, to make matter even worse, and he was just there. He was going to spend the night there under the cold and under the rain in the streets. And it really got me thinking at that moment. I really said, man, I'm really complaining and worrying about all this non-important BS, but I'm still going to my warm and comfortable room. And this guy right there is going to stay the entire night under the cold and under the rain. Really put things into perspective, and it taught me to be more grateful about the things that I have, even if I forget about them sometimes. And I think that's also what you should do, especially during challenging times, and that also worked for Buzz Aldrin. Number 3, embrace pain. Once you took responsibility and are grateful for what you have, you are in a much more peaceful and relaxed state that allows you to think much more clearly. And when that is done, you have to embrace pain. Pain is not your enemy. Pain can be your friend. Pain is simply telling you that something is wrong and you have to change it. You have to do something. You have to analyze why you feel pain, why you feel dissatisfied, depressed, or so on. And more likely than not, that is a problem with your values. The life you are having right now is in conflict with your values. It is not satisfying your values. So you have to correct this. In the case of Buzz Aldrin, he was feeling a lot of pain because throughout all his life, he was used to follow orders, to follow instructions given by somebody else, to answer to a duty. And as he says in his book, he was used to do this. That were his values. And all of a sudden, he was out there, alone, with nobody to tell him what to do. And that was his source of pain. So he concluded that he either had to change his values or change his life. So he decided to do both. He changed his values so that he didn't have to obey orders anymore, and he redesigned his life completely. And he focused on contributing to society and helping others. What he did basically is helping recovering alcoholics, and he did also a lot of consulting for new space projects, whether they are with NASA or with private companies like SpaceX and right now he's still very active. He's still consulting with SpaceX. So you see, he found new activities to satisfy his new values. Remember, pain can be your friend if you let him. It is a call to action and you have to hear it. The problem is that in today's society we approach pain in a way that is just dysfunctional. I mean, whenever somebody feels pain, depressed or dissatisfied, they say, oh, you feel pain, there's something wrong with you. Just take a pill, take an antidepressant and you will see everything will be great again. People really think that by taking those magical pills, everything will be great again. I mean, obviously that does not work. Buzz Aldrin himself was on pills and antidepressants for all throughout the 70s and it didn't work for him. It can help you, but it cannot be the entire solution, because depression, pain, dissatisfaction is a symptom of something bigger, of a bigger sickness, and you have to treat the sickness, not the symptoms. And the sickness there, in Buzz Aldrin's case and in most cases, is a conflict with values. Number 4, explore the buffet. When you go through these transitions in your life, when you have to redesign your life basically, you have to really explore what are the opportunities in front of you and what you want. And I use this buffet analysis. It's actually Kevin O'Leary using this analogy, is that imagine you're in front of a buffet and there are a lot of different foods, a lot of different meals you can choose from. And what you do is that you try a little bit of everything and then you decide what you want in greater quantity. And you can approach those transition periods the same way. You can just say, for example, you just got out of college and you say, okay, I'm gonna work a few months in a lot of different industries and then I will decide what I want to do full time. And don't feel bad about dropping things that do not satisfy you, because for some reason people feel obligated to continue something just because they started, but that is a mistake. Whenever you feel the loss of enthusiasm about something, it means you have to drop it most of the time and always explore more opportunities. Buzz Aldrin also explored the buffet when he was going through this transition period. He tried many things before finding out that what he wanted the most was giving motivational speeches, helping recovering alcoholics, and working on space projects. He tried many different things like staying in NASA, staying in the Air Force, work as a professor at the MIT, being a car salesman. You see, even advertising. And you see, he tried many different things, and whenever he knew that he didn't. Buzz Aldrin too explored the buffet before finding out that what he really wanted to do was giving motivational speeches, helping recovering alcoholics, and consulting on space projects. But he explored many different things. He did advertising, he stayed for a while at NASA, he stayed for a while at the US Air Force, he was on the board of many companies, and he also was a car salesman. And you see, he tried all these activities, none of them really satisfied him, so he dropped them and tried something else again and again until he found out what he really wanted. And if Buzz Aldrin can do it, that means you can do it too. That's it for this video about Buzz Aldrin. As always, I hope you liked it and learned something from it. If you want to share something with us, you can leave it in the comment section below, or you can send it directly to my email address that is in the description. I also encourage you to read the book Magnificent Desolation by Buzz Aldrin if you are inclined to learn more about his life, his struggles, and his achievements. And I will see you soon for a new video. In the meantime, take care.